Guys, don't look like we're about to be arrested, hey? We must be smiling.
Smiling, okay.
All the time.
If you see my teeth chattering, understand, just the cold.
It's the cold weather.
Okay, you can proceed.
Cool.
Sunil, you're a Durban boy, aren't you?
Was born here, yeah, born in Durban.
Yeah. And where are you
Definitely.
based now?
Based in Johannesburg. Well, normally before COVID in an Airbus, but now in Johannesburg on the ground.
And you
All
were
right,
SAP
let's
Global.
kick it off. Oh man, so let's kick it off. I think oh wow, we've got Lunga and he's just joined us. Thank you so much again.
Or is he live?
Thank you so much again, and welcome to the Innovation Festival for 2021, hosted by the Innovate Durban. So it's pretty phenomenal to actually see how Innovate Durban has started, stemming all the way back from 2014 all the way through to now, you know, and just to lend a bit on like sort of bringing that that narrative from the actual transformation and the optimization that we're going to be talking about later on today, is really to see how then the organization has transformed, you know, driving innovation through various stakeholders within the region. And I think it's always just a lovely time of that year when we're able to come out here and really shape the conversation of innovation in Durban, in KZN, and the broader South Africa, and really connecting to a global thought system. So today we're joined by three awesome gents. I think it really is a very compelling panel that we have today. So we've got members from government, we've got members from civil society, well, and sort of a startup space, and we've got commerce, right, the commercial folk. So I'm joined by Lunga Mdlala from eThekwini Municipality, joined by Sunil Yunus from SAP, and I've got Justin Scott from FabMad. So over to you. You know what? I'd like to start, and perhaps, you know, Sunil, you might be able to frame this conversation for us a bit better. You know, I mean, 25 years plus experience. You know, I'd really like to interrogate you in terms of what is this thing called digital transformation. You know, perhaps you can lean in there for us.
About that. Okay, now I'm unmuted. Sorry about that. In those almost 25 years that you speak of, I must say thanks for the opportunity, and it's a wonderful panel today. Coming through to my hometown, but today in Johannesburg is pretty chilly out here. But I remember the days when I started my career off, and I was this electronics and physics teacher, and we were always trying to think about what the future would look like from that point. But I often say to people, many of us talk about this fourth industrial revolution, and here we were sort of inventing that almost 15 to 20 years ago in terms of electronics and where we're going. But looking at digital transformation, it's as much a cultural and a business transformation as it is a technological one. And it's fundamentally a rethinking of the entire customer experience, the business models, the operations, that are undertaken by an organization. And it's about finding new ways to deliver value, generate revenue, and improve efficiency. In the case of, and I should touch on this because I see Lunga is also on the call, and of course, civil society. Nowadays, we don't just talk about private sector because of the increasing voice of civil society, you know, since Black Lives Matter has come about, and various movements, and particularly the role of government is essentially even more critical as part of this process. Now, you know, if one delves a little further in terms of this process and where it's taking us, and if you think of these four industrial revolutions, because we all remember that question in Parliament that was raised to the Deputy President. So I thought I should just touch on this. The four industrial revolutions, the steam power was the first one. That was disruptive technology. And then we had the assembly line, which is more or less the production line. And then the advent of computing. And now we're in the fourth revolution, which is about digital intelligent technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, and the use of Internet of Things to make our lives somewhat more comfortable. Now, you know, in this entire process, we find ourselves delved into this fourth industrial revolution, but many people say we are in the fifth revolution, because with 5G and the capabilities that 5G, you know, telecommunications brings and intelligent networks, we seem to be catapulting further and further into the future. And maybe as a sort of summary in terms of this thinking, digital transformation is a process of converting records, processes to digital form in order to decrease costs in business and improve the experience of the constituents. If you're government, it's basically the citizens. If you are civil society, it's your beneficiaries. And if you're in business, it's your customers. So that's how I would like to start off by framing this concept. It's as broad as one can imagine.
Well done. Thank you so much again, Sunil. I think, you know, and I loved how that you spoke about the future, and, you know, I mean, we're interrogating topics like, what is the future of work? You know, what is the future of cities? There's a big dialogue again around smart cities, and a strong campaign that's being driven by our own eThekwini municipality on really striving to be the cleanest and greenest city, you know, and carrying that accolade with it. Now, we also understand that, you know, government is very much responsible for creating an enabling environment and has a lot of stakeholders, sometimes perhaps more than business, right? So I'd like to ask Lunga to really give us a view of, you know, we understand that governments operate in very rigid frameworks, right? And are there any endeavors to relax these frameworks? And I'd like to also understand, so what are the pathways that usually block digital transformation, Lunga?
Thanks, Kululeko. Am I audible?
Very much so.
Okay. No, thanks for that. No, true, Kululeko. You know, we work in a very rigid, legislated and policy-driven, you know, at the municipal level, bylaw-driven environment. And a lot of these legislations and policies were not really designed with this kind of revolution, which is the fourth industrial revolution, in mind. You know, so they were designed for the time when, you know, the thought process was different, and the inputs and the environment was different. So we find ourselves today where a lot of these legislations and policies are actually becoming barriers to digital transformation. You know, I'll give you one example. You know, we are moving to the world of 5G now. You know, 5G is inevitable, and it's going to be one of those technologies of the future that we can't run away from. But for private sector to come into the municipality and start rolling out this kind of technologies, we find that they are hindered by bylaws and policies that don't allow them to be able to roll these things out very quickly. If you take, for example, we as a municipality, we've got mast policies which restrict vendors, for example, to erect their mast distances and all those kind of things. Way leaves that they have to apply for, they take forever to do. You know, the private sector comes, they say, we want to partner with you. We can bring this technology, we can bring these poles, we can help you roll out Wi-Fi quite quickly. But we find that our policies are actually not allowing them to do all those things. So it's a huge frustration. So the first thing that we have to do as municipalities is to start tackling those policy barriers. Because if we don't do that, then nothing is going to move. And we have to take the lead in that. You know, we can't wait for somebody else to do that. At the local level, yes, we have to do it, but we must also challenge some of this at national level and say, you must not be afraid. I mean, if the MFMA, for example, is making it hard for us to move, we must not be afraid to challenge it. We can't just sit and say, oh, because it comes from national treasury, then it must happen like that. I think that's where some of this revolution has to start. You know, some of the that's the legislative side. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done on the bylaw side. You know, you find, I mean, if you take street polls, you go to other countries, go to street polls, you see all sorts of technology on street polls. You come to the city here, electricity department will tell you, no, 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 no. This poll here, you can't do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because if it's this material and all sorts of things happen, you know, so it's crazy. So we need to deal with the legislative and the policy side of things and make it easier for us to collaborate and even for the private sector to come invest in the cities. So that's very important. So as a city, that is high on the agenda. You know, some of the key barriers that I find moving towards digital transformation is the people. You know, people are everything. The whole, you know, digital transformation is about changing the mindsets of people. And that is one of the most difficult things to do. People need to start thinking differently. People need to start questioning what they do. People need to start challenging the norms. You know, in government, people are too complacent. You know, they're too relaxed. This is how things go, stuff like that. So trying to change that culture and the thinking is one of the most difficult things that we have to go through. So
I'm totally got you. Now, and you know, you talk about a new way of thinking. You're talking about a new culture. You're talking about relaxing certain frameworks, policies, legislate to really enable government to sort of drive this agenda forward. But before I move on to the next, my next question, and this one will be directed to Justin, I'd just like to send a shout out to all the people that are joining us. So I see Priya here, I see Zanele, I see Nicholas, Holden, hey, what up, dude? I see you there. I'm Suzanne Sakiwo, hey. I see Lauren, I see Amy's joined us here, Batandwa's here, and Joash. Great stuff, and thank you so much for joining in on this conversation. I'm already seeing 2 questions that are coming up there on the Q&A bar, so please, again, I'd like to encourage anyone that's listening to this conversation to really type their questions in that Q&A. So Justin, you know, so we've come from the space of government, right? And this really speaking about how rigid it is. Now, tell us a bit about you and what digital means for you.
Sure. I don't know if we have enough time, Nkuleko. So on our world, maybe just to take a second and talk about what we do. We deal in the world of media and software development. So we based here in South Africa. We understand the constraints, but we also write software based out of New York. And so we have a team out there. We have a team in India. We have developers in Mexico, and we write software for the American market, the international market, and then we play around in this, you know, this Fab Mags media space locally. So what does digital mean for us? I think the answer in a nutshell, I told you I can tell long stories. In a nutshell, it's opportunity. That's what we see. And then within that opportunity, understanding what our capability is. So, you know, Lunga he made a great point. He's constrained in government, but there's other constraints. You know, so we entrepreneurial, and you think, oh, so the world is our oyster, and there's opportunity there, but you know, businesses aren't ready for digital. We think they are. You think, for example, in America they're ready, but you know, the East and West Coast are. Central America not. They're quite old school. They use old systems. Sunil, they don't use modern SAP and ERP systems. They love Excel. You know, so digital's opportunity, but it also comes with a challenge. The world is not as ready, in my opinion, as we think they are. As technologists believe everyone's like us. There's a lot of people out there that love paper and Quattro Pro and old systems. I hope that answers the question.
Got you. And just to stick with you a bit more there, Justin. So what was the impact of the pandemic, right? The moment it was announced, like what was the impact for you on your business?
So there was a couple sides, because I play across a couple. So I'll give you the 50,000 foot view. In our Fab Mags business, in the magazine business, we didn't feel it massively. That's more the culture of South Africans and how we hunker down and work hard, and that team has led really, really well. I won't say it didn't impact us. I mean, we had 1 or 2 editions where we shifted from print magazines to digital, and you know, this is exactly the forum where you go, hey, how did that go? Did it work for you? So where are we today? We back at print. We haven't stuck with digital. print is a great mechanism, and that just shows you, the audience and the customer base still want the print as an engagement mechanism. In the US, in the software space, we were busier than ever. In some of our software lines, we did see a dip. In other areas, we saw huge demand. We all know this. Everyone went online. And so all of a sudden, people were looking, for example, we work in the LinkedIn space with lead generation. Everyone was trying to find new ways to sell. And so LinkedIn just exploded. So yeah, we had wins and gains. In the print business, a little bit of adjustments and a pivot. LinkedIn space exploded. We did extremely well. And then the software business, we did take a bit of a smack on the other side.
Thank you so much for your insights. I'd just like to say a shout out to Karen. She's there live tuning from Durban Country Club. They actually have a watch party going on. So there are folks in different parts of the city that are tuning into this conversation. So shout out to the likes of your Terrys, your Malis, your Andiles, and a key word there for today being opportunity. And Holden, thank you so much for the insights there again. Great insights, guys. I think they like this conversation. But over to you, Sunil. So unlike Justin, right, you come from a massive organization, right? And essentially your clients are business, right? And for those of whom aren't familiar with SAP, right, and it being software as a service and whatnot, how do you think that has changed how organizations work?
That's a great question, Nkululeko. I think, so SAP, is going to turn 50 years next year. It's going to be half a century old. Was a company started off by 5 entrepreneurs. They used to work for IBM. They developed some real-time software and they took it to IBM, and IBM said, look, we don't think so right now. So they left IBM and they started SAP. And today IBM makes a lot of money out of SAP, in terms of selling its software. So we have about 100,000 employees. I remember coming back, I was in Mexico City. And that was the last trip that I've taken from last year, right? Basically coming back to South Africa. And within a week from that, SAP announced that we're going to stop, travel to a large extent. We had a number of tools in place, as Lunga would be aware. So we're not only dealing with the private sector, we have large government clients as well, like the province of Gauteng runs on SAP. There are municipalities like Cape Town, a city of Cape Town, Tshwane, city of Johannesburg. But coming back to this, as a global technology company, a lot of our work was undertaken because we are dealing with teams that are across the globe. We're dealing and using a lot of technology to run our business already. The transition for people who loved going to the office, and I'm not picking on those people because I like them a lot, but I'm not that office person. And everyone in SAP worldwide knows that, because my view is if you're sitting in the office, who's bringing in the revenue, right? Of course. So it was a bit of a mind shift for a lot of our employees. Fortunately, we had bought a number of companies, one of them being Qualtrics. Qualtrics academics will know about this company. It's basically a sophisticated version of what you would call SurveyMonkey, very much more sophisticated. And through Qualtrics, we used, we began to eat what we call our own dog food. So we started using Qualtrics to look at what the mood was of our employees and how they were experiencing working in these environments. And what came out of that in Nkululeko is very interesting, because a few weeks ago, our global board took a decision to have something called a mental health day in SAP. Everyone got a day off, shut down completely. Of course, we had our skilled staff in place. So it showed a company that was taking very much seriously its employees. In terms of our performance, we already in June last year reported that we're going to adjust down our revenue targets, our profitability somewhat, because we could see the contraction in the market. What I could say, Justin, unfortunately, because SAP is a globally listed company, the figures are there to be seen. But in the first quarter of this year, they blew out the lights. In probably the Orion system, we reached something like $7.9 billion, which was our best performance for the last 5 years in the history of the company. So it's quite phenomenal, and it shows you that digital is the way to go. People have adjusted to this lifestyle. They're beginning to think more and more of how they accommodate that in their lifestyle. And the last point I want to raise is that SAP also did something which is really, really off the chart. And I'm very proud of that. They took a decision, SAP's board, that we will no more force people to be in an office. They can be in an office, they can work at home, they can start whatever time they want to start. They can finish whatever time they want to finish. And the result of that is because we've seen over the last 14 months how people, when they're left to work independently as adults, you will get your outliers, you know, like in every classroom, you'll get a naughty kid. But the people have shown much more conviction and commitment to deliver under those circumstances because they're able to weave their family lives into work. And the last point I want to raise is it was during times of quality management and clocking cars that we changed upside down what is typically a family unit. Because your first family unit is where you come from. And now we see that there's much more, we have happier staff. We see that in our surveys, etc. So that's been our experience. And fortunately, I can say that we ended up on the right side of things. There are many companies which have gone out of business.
Yeah,
right,
got you 100%. You know, Sunil, when you spoke earlier on, you started mentioning SAP and its local presence and the various cities and as clients that you service, right? And I think that sort of landed a nice topic here to say that, you know, there's a big drive around creating competitive cities, right? And creating cities that are resilient, things that are really geared towards the future. And, you know, just having a look at the attendees, I'm looking at the Chair of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is Prof. Jonathan Sapsted. He's from the Newcastle University. We've also got the program manager for innovation in eThekwini municipality. And this then leads me to the question, and this one is geared for you, to say, you know, looking at inner city competitiveness, right? So looking at your Joburg, your Gautengs, you're looking at your city of Cape Town, etc. What are eThekwini municipalities or our municipalities' current endeavors around creating digital transformation? And what are some of the initiatives that we can see come out from the municipality in a bid to build a more future forward city?
Thanks, Kulego. You know, the word smart city has become a buzzword nowadays, and it's probably one of the most abused words that we hear nowadays. And the problem with the smart cities is that, you know, there's no universal definition of what that is. So if you go to the internet, you've had hundreds and hundreds of definitions of what that is. So what is important is that each city must be able to define for itself what smart city means for it. You know, just like Justin was saying, what does digital mean for him? It means opportunity. So it may mean different things to different people because different cities have got different challenges and they're at different maturity levels. So it's important that first you need to define for yourself what do you mean if you say you want to be a smart city. Then obviously you have to put together a strategy of how we want to get there. For us as eThekwini, we've focused on becoming a smart government first. You know, for our motto is that for you to be smart, we have to be digital first, because we have to start changing all the mindsets and put the right thinking behind it. You know, so our focus so far has been on being a smart government. So focusing on digital transformation and digital optimization. I mean, one of the other side of it that we haven't touched upon is optimization. So what we've done, we've looked at all the different technologies and emerging trends in the market and look at what opportunities do they bring to the municipality. We look at also the other side of it. What threats do those also bring to the you remember that for every technology, there's also opportunity and threats. So we can't leave the threats outside of it and all the risks associated with technology. So, and then we look at what are our digital capabilities as a city, what are the gaps, you know, what do we need to fill in? And then we begin to put together what we need to do in order to start becoming a smart government. You know, smart government, obviously we talk about being much more transparent, efficient, being closer to the citizens, being listening to people and all those kind of things. So what we've decided to do is to say we are going to focus more on digital optimization, more over digital transformation. Digital, Justin made a very good point that a lot of organizations talk about digital transformation, but there's very, very few that are actually doing it. And it's a very difficult thing to start. And number three, a lot of organizations are not ready. So as a city, we did what we call an agency readiness matrix, where we looked at how urgent are these things and how ready are we? And we find that we're hardly ready. So we're not going to embark on a digital transformation ready when we're not ready. So our strategy is to say, let's focus on digital optimization processes. Optimization meaning we're going to incrementally improve services, processes, the business models, operations, and all those kind of things. And then we select a high value but low risk projects, so that we show value very quickly, and then we begin to educate the leadership, and then we move to much more harder projects. So a few things that we're looking at as a city, we're looking at, we've got the mobile app that we're launching big, that we're going to help the citizens. We're going to be looking at the citizen engagement app, where the city engages with the citizens, also employees. Politicians can talk to their constituents in the wards. We're looking at projects like, if you take if you want to make some of the things smart, if you look at our promenade, for example, we can make the promenade very smart by putting all kinds of technologies of CCTV, public Wi-Fi there, connecting to the fiber of the city, and those kind of things. We're looking at a new corridor, for example, for our rapid bus transit system. We want to make the whole route, give it the whole thing high-speed connectivity. So when people are sitting in the bus, they can actually work continuously, So there's a number of projects that we're actually looking at. But what is important for now is what are some of the low-hanging fruit that we can quickly deploy, but then we can look at the longer-term other projects that are more harder to implement.
Well understood, well understood. And I think that's a very compelling vision, especially for a city like eThekwini, And I think what you're mentioning there is creating some nice spaces, especially for young people. We now have the 74.7% unemployment stat that was released 2 weeks ago. And, I think it's telling us that the future of work is really important in defining it and creating a roadmap that will allow young people to participate in a future that they feel that they can own. And, I think that then what you've presented now, Lunga, is creating sort of a framework, or rather a sort of formwork that people can then implant and inject their own enterprises and stuff like that, And I'd like to reach out to Justin here, and really say, you're very entrepreneurial. You've been in the game for about 20 years. So what are the opportunities that you see where young people can participate, and especially those that are on this call right now? So I'm seeing Sanele Mtambo there. I'm seeing Olinde Lwacele, who's coming through there. I'm seeing again, it's Joash. I'm seeing Yamke Lantleko and Asipe Taleka, So what would you want to tell a young person right now who's listening in on this webinar?
Great question. Before I dive in, and thank you, Lunga, I just wanted to compliment you. I think what the city is doing is fantastic. For those of us blessed enough to travel, if you go down to Fifth Avenue in New York City, and you walk down Fifth Avenue, you can jump onto the city's Wi-Fi, and it fundamentally changes how you interact and how you're a tourist in the city, and how you can find your Starbucks or your retail shop. So it doesn't seem like people go, oh, why is the city doing Wi-Fi? There's far more pressing issues. That's a fantastic issue. So just, I compliment you guys on doing that. I can't even pronounce the name. It's terrible. I tried it so many times in practice. I've got NK. So NK. So this is a great question, and I actually prepped for this one because I anticipated there were going to be a lot of people watching, just going, okay, so this is all great, but what does it mean for me? So I'm going to talk through a couple of veins, and bear with me, guys. Let's take media, for example. Our world has shifted. So, whether it's newspapers or magazines or video, let's talk about how digital transformation has changed that. We know things like social media, we know Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, we know Google and all the other mechanisms in terms of that digital transformation, big players. But what that's created is those are the platforms. Those platforms are hungry for content, as an example. So Facebook is nothing if it's not fed with content. And so there already is an opportunity. So someone will go, I'm not a technologist, I'm not a programmer or whatever, but there could be phenomenal content creators. So, people who can write great story or create great video or take phenomenal photos for Instagram, help businesses or communities, go and produce phenomenal content. So I think the one thing is content is a creative mindset, but the platforms, like I've spoken about, are enablers for that creativity. So, that's one area. The second, which is really close to my heart, clearly, is software development. We spoke about 74% unemployment. Okay, but we just can't find developers that, we're not, Sunil and SAP has done a phenomenal job. I mean, they must have developers all around the world, but I mean, we're spending tens of thousands of dollars a month in our other businesses, going to India. I love India and I think they're great people, but I've got families and stuff that would take that money every day, all day here on the North Coast where I live. And so where my young software developers, there's opportunity. The minute someone can come to me with a half decent skill shift, I'd want to shift that revenue and bring it back to South Africa. India's software development, they did $83 billion of transfers through TransferWise last year. I mean, unbelievable. These are people that are doing freelance work that are just getting paid through international payment gateways. 83 billion. I think that, talk about opportunity, learn a skill, get into tech because it's around, become part of the digital transformation, and just, being in that world is there. And then one last one, there's tons. I thought retail, again, opportunity, lots of people selling. There's, down from the simple people creating crafts and product. I mean, in the good old days, how did someone who created something that was a handcrafted item get it to the world? It was difficult. Someone else came along, took margin, put it into the supply chain, delivered it. Nowadays, route to market, route to customer, a lot faster. So there's great opportunity for intermediaries in the informal space to be able to go find great people with great products and help them get into shops, ways to then digitize their product and get it to market. And so tons of opportunity there. There's lots of people who aren't ready for digital, but there's a lot of us who could go and handhold them and become that buffer between not being ready and embracing the platforms and moving across. So those are three in my view. They say stick to the three. That's always the magic three. There's tons more, but those are the ones that I think I'd be excited about.
And thank you so much for that, Justin. And I'm seeing the chat bar just buzzing of people just really finding those opportunities very appetizing. And I think you spoke about the ability to work within constraints, right? Because with constraints comes creativity and whatnot. And I think now business is going to have to get a lot more creative, right? And especially, I mean, when was it? It was just announced a couple of minutes ago that we're on to stage 4, right? And so the conversation around digital becomes an incredibly interesting one when you've got a constraint of saying, hey, we're aspiring for the Internet of Things and powering the internet, but there's no electricity, And I think it becomes a really interesting dialogue when we really when we really talk about these things. Now, Sunil, let's just start there. Speaking about constraints, right? Where should digital transformation or optimization start? Is it through employee engagement? Is it through external stakeholders, operations, products? Like, what does that ecosystem look like?
That question was posed to many leaders. And the question was, when did you find out about digital transformation? Can you guess the answer? When COVID hit, right? Now, seriously, this is it. I mean, unless you're running, a big business, you get to understand it, you're optimizing, etc. Essentially, business transformation is digital transformation is a business decision. It's a decision that's driven from the board. It's driven through the CEO. It is not a CIO-led decision. The CIO may influence that, but essentially, the proximity of IT and related outputs has moved away from decision-making solely on CIOs. In the past, CIOs would come in and say, look, MTN is offering us the big, you remember those big phones that we used to have, the Nokia phones, everyone wanted that. And hey, this is the latest thing and you can get a fax on it and so on and so forth. It's not that way anymore. The reason is every person in the business is up to speed. They're in the fourth industrial revolution, they get it. Now, if we take that and we reverse engineer it, one of the things that we see increasingly happen is something called white spacing. And white spacing it's a simple thing. If you like going to gym and pumping the iron and all that, white spacing essentially is looking at a bodybuilder that's been doing it for 20 years and is at his peak. And you look at that and say, I've got some distance to go. So it's essentially looking at where you are in the digital journey versus other organizations in your industry and where it's being driven. And design thinking is used many, many times over and over again to extricate that, to understand where that is, determine the white space, and come back and implement that. Besides, nowadays, the competition is not only in your industry. Just think of the days. ShopRite used to sell mealie meal and sugar. Guess what ShopRite is selling today? You can buy your airline tickets. They are a true intermediary. You can buy your airline tickets. You can buy the lotto there. You can do a number of electronic transactions in Pick and Pay and in ShopRite. All of a sudden, they are competing with people in industries that were never part of the game. So these are the type of decisions that need to be made. And I listened carefully to Lunga and the approach that's being taken with the city. And I'm normally down for vacation back home because we miss the warm water and the ocean, and we miss the South African Music Awards there at ICC and so on. But I think it's a good approach considering that resources are constrained. I do think there is opportunity to sort of piggyback off what some of the other sort of global cities have done. And I know eThekwini is always rated very highly on the list of global cities in terms of visiting and so on. So just to take that back, if it's a government department, it's often a combination of a political decision of either the premier, if it's it's the province, or the mayor, if it's the city itself, together with the city manager and guided by knowledgeable people. And Lunga falls in that category when it comes to cities. In private sector, it's driven by benchmarking, basically. So it is an all-encompassing. And the last point on this is the change management process. Remember, Lunga made references, Justin also spoke about this to some extent. The readiness to be able to undertake this journey. You cannot run a comrades marathon by running half a kilometer in your back garden, and the next day you want to run the comrades. You can't do it. It'll never happen in this lifetime. So we bring it down to that level. And Nkululeko, if you may allow me 30 seconds, I want to touch on two other points raised by my eloquent speakers who have joined me here today. On the matter of skilling up, digital skills. I wear another hat in KwaZulu-Natal, and I should mention that as the chair of the board of the KwaZulu-Natal Science Center. And we've moved. We used to be at Gateway. Now we are based out, at the old airport. We've been doing a lot of work in communities, building up robotics capabilities, some really rural areas in the North Coast, Northern Natal, KwaZulu-Natal, etc. And we've done that through this first Lego League program. And the other area where we're doing a lot of work is building not the idea that everyone we teach to code will become a programmer, but building capability and understanding how technology impacts your lives. And we have this Africa Code Week program, which is now the largest digital literacy program on the continent. So I thought I'll just touch on those. I think besides last year, we did about 2 million, but prior to that, we've done 4 million children, 3 million children in a year. And now we're out to almost 54 countries, 53 countries going into the 54. Depends, North Sudan, South Sudan. And then if you think about Morocco and the Sahara, it depends how you look at it, right? So yeah, these are things, and Justin's point, to Justin's point, let's find them young, farm them young, build their capabilities. We have the youngest population in the African continent. KZN has the largest population by number in the country. Last count I checked, it was 8 million or whatever the case is, right? So we have all that potential, and eThekwini as well. And I remember there used to be Smart City, Lunga, you'll remember that, and Kuleko, you remember this quite well. Smart Exchange, you've been driving that. So there's a lot of pieces. The speakers here, although you have private sector and you have an entrepreneur and you have Lunga as a sort of CIO of the municipality in his capabilities, there's so much of connectivity.
Well understood. Blistering efforts and blistering work that you're doing there, Sunil. It's really inspiring. Wow, sheesh. Those are large numbers, and that's very encouraging and very inspiring. I'd just like to again reach out to to remind our audience that we are aware that they are with us. So I'd just like to go make a quick round just to say, what up, Francis, Lungelo, I see you've joined us more recently. Again, Carisha, what up, Carisha? We've even got the Senior Communications Officer of eThekwini Municipality. We've got Priya. Priya's just joined in. Hello, Priya. Who else do we have? Let me just go through the names here. Yeah, I think that's us. And I continue, and I'd like to encourage the people listening to this that just go in that chat bar and ask questions that you feel that are necessary for you. So when talking about that, let's talk about commercialization and IP. And maybe this one is for you, Justin. There's so much that's going out, right? There's that ever-waging battle between IP and open source, right? And I think they either enable, the conversation is that sometimes they don't often enable. I mean, more recently, the biggest topic is, Bitcoin and the likes. So what do you think, and how best do you think that IP and commercialization play in the space of digital, especially when we start looking at things like IP, and you knowing this because you develop software as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really, Inka, that's a great question. So what are my views? I think the views from our perspective are, where you have something truly niche, truly different, you need to try to protect it. So I'll talk about IP protection more importantly. Again, the likes of the SAPs and the big players, they've got good revenues. I was going to say deep pockets, Sunil, sorry, but you do a lot more than entrepreneurs, and they've got lawyers that can lawyer up. How does a mid-sized business or small business entrepreneur protect their IP? Here's what we've figured out. Again, all respect to my brothers in India and Russia, they can reverse engineer anything. So if you're trying to protect your IP, the reality is they're going to copy it, and they're going to copy it, and they're going to take it to market or resell it. In maybe not quite as great as what you're doing, but they will do it. So it's very tough to protect. Try and go sue someone in India or in Russia or Kazakhstan or Estonia. They're all very difficult places to bring lawsuits against them. America is a lot easier. So my view would be simple, and I'm not answering the whole question around commercialization, but IP is strong for me, is develop a product, create an MVP, minimum viable product, create something that the market wants, and be upfront. Just go, get it there and keep going. Because as long as it takes somebody to copy, you can innovate and you can build market share. If your product and your technology is good, people will adopt, first people to market. Sometimes nice to be second, because you can copy the failures of the first, but generally the first couple to market are great. And there's people, they will, I'll put money on it. Everyone in the chat, guys, if you build something, someone's going to copy it every single time. We were first to market on a product called eLink Pro. It was great around LinkedIn and lead generation. They stole our source code literally off the internet. They repackaged it, and we compete with them. Our competitors got bigger than us. So it's a tough world. But my answer to that is, if you can't protect it legally and you have teams all over, then just run hard and be first to market. Did I answer the question, NK?
Yeah, you did.
Cool.
I know. And I think what do they call it? So I mean, there's emerging themes that are also coming out of this conversation, right? So it's the idea that speed is one of the ultimate competitive weapon, right? So in other words, being first to market sometimes, but also because of the future of work, we're also realizing that collaboration is the new innovation, right? Understanding that because organizations were fractured during this time of the pandemic, people having to, certain folks being redundant in organizations and not necessarily have the same earnings as they did back in the day, right? So now you're seeing the emergence of things like the gig economy, where people have to be multi-skilled and take on various things, right? Now, I'd like to bring that back down a lot better and really drill down on what Ulunga spoke about earlier on, right? So we understand that about competitiveness and cities and whatnot, and the idea that the South African Cities Network is essentially now coming up with this renewed IUDF sort of framework, right? And one of the things that they've realized is to use digital to sort of drive that thing. Now, I'm keen to understand, especially with government's initiative around the district development model, right? In terms of wanting people to interface a lot better with government. Like, how do you think digital might empower that process? And like, what are your what's your foresight there?
Yeah, thanks, Kulilego. Government has got a lot of great ideas and great plans. If I look at the IUDF, Integrated Urban Development Framework, it's a good framework. It says all the right things. Just like the NDP, it's an excellent document. It says all the great things, all the aspirations, everything that you want to do. The key thing for me is the execution. The IUDF, one of the things that I think it should touch on is the barriers that we talked about earlier. As coming from COPTA, it should actually be paving the way for this wonderful framework to be able to take advantage of digital transformation. So one of the things they should be looking at to removing is the barriers like legislation. I mean, it's Department of Local Government, so they know all the legislations in local government, and they know what are some of those that make it difficult for us to implement digital transformation. So I think one of the missing pieces for me there is they focus too much on saying municipalities must invest in infrastructure. That's fine. We know that IT is the backbone of digital, but at the same time, they don't talk about how that must happen. They don't talk about how, a lot of municipalities are struggling even to fund investing in the infrastructure. You've got broadband infraco, you've got all these entities of government that we don't actually know what they are doing in this space and how are they actually empowering the municipalities. So I think they should have been dealing more along those lines of how is it actually going to happen. For us as municipalities, yes, we will look at how digital, what we can apply, when we implement this framework. The key thing there for me is that in our urban planning and design, we must put digital at the core. We must embed smart thinking when we design our spaces, so it cannot be after the fact. If you're going to design a building, you must think about greening and fiber and all those kind of things while you're designing it. You talk about spaces. So that's what needs to happen, is that, because a lot of times I see in government, it doesn't happen. It's after the fact, oh, by the way, we should have done this, should have done that. But we need to do it during the design and planning stage. The other important thing as well is that DTM talks about an integrated plan, right? It's one plan for the district. Now, this word integrated also, we've heard it so many times. In municipalities, we've got something called an integrated development plan. It's produced every 5 years. It has become like a legislative requirement, but there is actually nothing integrated about the integrated development plan, you know, because in the delivery of services, where is integration? As citizens of a team, we expect that integration to translate into service delivery, but it's sitting in paper. So it's the same risk that we run with the DDM model. Yes, it's well and good, but it's in the execution, you know? So it goes back to people, which is a challenge that I mentioned earlier. We need to change people's mindset, and because people think in a fragmented way, you know, changing people to think holistically, to think in an integrated fashion, to begin to think outside of their areas of specialization, to start thinking about the big picture. For me, that is a big challenge that the whole model is going to face. So if they can focus on that human aspect of it, and say, how is it going to actually happen? You can have a lot of people in one room from different sectors and areas, but it doesn't mean that what they are doing is integrated.
100%, 100%, you know, and I think that, you know, you mentioned it starts with the people, you know, and I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces in our attendees. I see Carla Lee there, who's actually a lead designer and a project manager, and one of the few things that she will tell you about is human-centered design, right? And I know we've got Amy Ben here as well, who tell you things about design thinking, right? So always having that human-centered approach to all the things that we are doing. So I'm just being aware of the time so we've got 5 minutes on the call. And I'd like to, again, encourage people who are listening to us here to really drop their thoughts on the chat, or is and really just look at Q&A thing. So I'm seeing 2 questions here that are coming through from one of our watch parties at the Durban Country Club. They're talking about the e-tender system, right? And when this is going to happen, are there any plans? And it's also talking about, is the municipality planning to move on and go to paperless?
Yeah, thanks, Kululeko. Yes, paperless definitely, but paperless, it's a long-term project, you know, so that is the goal that we want to achieve. Like I said before, you know, we need to start small and start building on those things. Paperless, yes, it's a goal of the city. Because of the COVID, you know, we're going to start, for example, dealing with committees. We've got your EXCO, you've got your council, you've got executive management committees, you've got different committees within the municipality. So it's good to start with those kinds of committees to make sure that everything that happens there is paperless, but at this stage it's not, unfortunately, even at the senior and executive management level, making sure that decision-making, you know, the signatures that take place, the follow-ups and all those kind of things, it's all automated. You know, that's where the start is going to be, and then we're going to start bringing some of those services then online, you know, with the citizens and stuff like that. The e-tenders.
And one last one for you again, and perhaps you can answer that alongside the e-tender thing, right? So it's, can we not reverse bill at a nominal fee the businesses that are interacted with by a user? So in other words, looking at reverse billing in order to access Wi-Fi. That is a question from Ashok Naidu.
Sorry, I just missed that one, Kululeko.
Reverse billing at a nominal fee type solution where the companies are actually reverse billed so that the citizens can access Wi-Fi.
Okay. No, that's definitely will be open for discussion, because you know the rate at which we're rolling out Wi-Fi at the moment, it will probably take us another 20 years to be able to reach all the communities, especially the semi-rural and stuff like that. So we can't do it alone as a city. So the partnerships are critical for us So whatever options and whatever possibilities exist for us to be able to roll those out very quickly, we'll be very much keen to engage with the private sector. I mean, we've had a company coming to us and saying, look, can we partner with you? We'll lay out the entire infrastructure, but give us advertising space, give us this and that and that, you know. So, but at the same time, it goes back to our own policies that we said we need to sort out. So yes, we will look at all those options and find the best way to quickly be able to implement this solution.
All right, fantastic, thank you. So we've got 2 minutes left, and I'd like to do a round robin here. Sunil, you can kick us off, then we'll move over to Justin, and we'll close with Lunga.
Right, so thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to the audience for those questions. Lunga, I'd just like to point out that SAP has the Ariba network, which is the largest business network for procurement. You know, it's been tried and tested. Touch base with us on that in the future. I understand you have your procurement policies, etc. What I would like to say to the audience in particular is Elon Musk said there is nothing that you cannot learn from scratch. So people ask Elon, and I've met him and I've been to SpaceX and I had that privilege. And they say to him, how did you learn about rocket science? And he said, look, I spoke to a few people and I read a lot. Right? Just listen to that. He spoke to a few people and he read a lot. So I would encourage anyone and everyone out there, there's freely available technological capabilities. Continue with lifelong learning. Listen carefully to the younger generation because they are faster and quicker to it and they adopt things. And ultimately, we've got to make sure that we as Africans leverage this fourth industrial revolution. We should not be consumers of it alone. We should be creators of the future. Thank you.
Who was next? Okay, me. So I'll grab it. So firstly, thank you for the opportunity and the panel. It's the first time I've met Sunil and Lunga, and you know, I feel privileged to sit amongst gentlemen like them and yourself, Inka, and have the discussion. For me, what's exciting is these platforms. We always say we need more of them, but we find that when we come together as communities and we talk and we share stories, which is what we do at FabMags, and in that, you know, that old sort of storytelling way, people who hear the stories for the first time are inspired and incentivized and motivated to do stuff. Those who hear it multiple times over are able to reflect and realize they may have not done what they need to, and they'll adjust their behavior. And those who've heard it many times and have executed will reflect back on those stories and conversations and you know, feel gratitude for what they've achieved. So these forums are fantastic. You know, I agree with Sunil, and I think Lunga, you spoke about it. So there's two things I want to depart with the audience. One is I was also blessed to visit Facebook and spend time there. The people there are like us. Don't think we're different, guys. They're smart. I got to go there with my daughter, but I said, you know, I told my daughter Roxy, look around. These are people from all around the world. They're not employing a certain type of person in terms of race. They're employing the smartest people. That's what it boils down to. You know, the guy behind me was from India. There were other guys from all around the world. And so that's fantastic. So just remember, as Africans, we can do that. And then Lunga's point, which is a great quote I heard, there's a quote that says, some think and some do, some both, but often few. Don't get caught up in the thinking. Let's execute. You know, every time we execute in software development, we agile, we go through a cycle, we learn, we fix the mistakes, we release the next one. Sometimes we get so caught up in the thinking and planning, we forget to execute. So that's probably my closing thing. And again, thanks to all of you for the time.
Thank you, Justin. Lunga, parting words?
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Nkululeko. No, it's been excellent meeting colleagues here. We had a great discussion. I think there's room for more after this seminar to discuss, you know, and see how we take the city forward. The parting words for me, you know, in this journey, this digital journey, We need strong leadership, both political and administrative. We need transformational leadership. We need leadership that is bold. We need leadership that is strategic, that will think long term. You know, the cities that are successful today, it did not happen overnight. You know, there was a bold vision and they executed. So, you know, that's what, you know, that's the first thing for me that is required. The second thing is that I think as a city, Justin made this point, and I think it's very, very important, especially in government. We tend to think that we need to get solutions elsewhere, or we need to get solutions from established companies, or that kind of thing. We need to start believing, you know, that we as people here can create those solutions. You know, as a municipality, and we need to support those local companies. You know, the youngsters today, they can create anything. They can create apps, they can create systems, they create solutions. We as government, we need to support them. I mean, one of the things that we're looking at, for example, is to start having an open data where we make data available to youngsters, where they can take that data and start developing solutions that will solve their problems in their own communities. You know, they can even have, you know, like Justin was saying, they can create IP behind those things and that kind of. So that is very important, that we need to support the youngsters and we need to give them those opportunities to be able to give us the solutions that we're looking for. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lunga. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all. Shout out to the team at Innovate Durban working in the background here to make this Innovation Festival phenomenal. I'd like to shout out to the audience that really joined us. So I see Lauren, I see Jana, I see Holden again, I see Carla Lee there, Gordon Reed, Samgeli Siwe, Lungelo Mchunu, Francis Jumo, Sanele Mtambo, and Prof. Jonathan Sapset from Newcastle University. Again, thank you so much, folks. And please do not forget, this is still carrying on tomorrow. Day 2 is happening. So again, join online, connect, and just do best. And let's shape a new future for our city. Take care.